Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Energy Frontiers, proudly brought to you by the African Energy Chamber, the leading energy sector advocacy group on the continent. I am Justina Okechukwu, and as always, we begin with some of the biggest energy news making the headlines at this time. A South African energy company known as Renergen has announced the start of commercial production of the liquid helium at its production plant in the country. The company has now begun stockpiling the helium product for international markets, and first shipments expected later this month. Global Petroleum Limited has entered advanced talks with a potential partner for a farming agreement for the company's PEL 94 license in Namibia. The Africa-focused oil and gas company says if successful, the partnership could enable the exploitation of a projected 2.747 billion barrels of oil on the license. Sonatrach of Algeria has announced the resumption of oil activities on the Kafra block located in the Republic of Niger. In addition, the two countries are exploring the potential to revive the ambitious multi-billion-dollar Trans-Saharan gas pipeline project. Sound Energy, a UK-based energy company, has resumed gas workover operations at its Tendara gas field in Morocco. The company says the focus of these operations will be on gas well TE7, which is being prepared for long-term production into the micro-liquefied natural gas plant currently under construction at the site. The Export-Import Bank of the United States has approved a $1.6 billion loan to Miami-based company Sun Africa to build a solar mini-grid in southern Angola. The funds will be used for the development of 65 solar mini-grids, installation of 200 solar cabins, and 60,000 solar home systems. Libya Oilfields and Port Supply Company has partnered with Tunisia's Workman Group to enhance safety standards in Libya's oil and gas industry. The agreement, signed in Sousse, Tunisia, is aimed at improving safety conditions in Libya's oil sector. In Botswana, the state-owned power company signed a power purchase agreement with Sinotswana Green Energy, a consortium of Chinese and Botswana companies, for the construction of a 100-megawatt solar plant in the southern African country. The project is expected to start electricity generation by the end of 2025. And that's the summary of your energy news headlines. Global banking institutions in Europe and North America have been accused of discriminating against investment in Africa's oil and gas projects. We get a legal perspective on this discourse when Energy Frontiers return. This is Energy Frontiers. Now, Africa's leading energy advocacy group, the African Energy Chamber, has announced plans to take legal action against Europe and North American banks and non-bank institutions for their refusal to fund African oil and gas projects. The Chamber's executive chairman, NG Ayuk, argues that this discriminatory behavior is not just a setback for Africa's economic development, but also a threat to the continent's access to critical energy resources. This lawsuit could have far-reaching consequences for Africa's energy future and its position in the global market. To gain insight into this developing news, I spoke with Zion Adeoye, the CEO of Centurion Group, a law firm based in Johannesburg that specializes in energy sector legal matters. Zion shared what the upcoming unprecedented legal battle could look like and its implications for Africa's oil and gas sector.
For those close to the matter, and I think this should be everyone interested in the economic development of Africa, I think it's high time for something to be done about the paucity of funds for African energy projects, especially in the oil and gas space. Now, that's a resource that key nations in Africa have in abundance. And the paucity of funds means that these nations are unable to generate revenue, are unable to work on energy security, and certainly the economic development of the continent. Three main issues. I think it boils down to the violation of the sovereign rights of these nations to develop their natural resources. Also, there's discriminatory application of the ESG policies or whatever policies have been developed by these institutions in determining where financing flows will go to. And thirdly, certainly Africa cannot develop without energy, also without the revenue generated from these sources. So it's a major issue, and we feel nothing could be more justiciable than this.
Right. You have mentioned very key points and what led to that litigation. Now, how many institutions are you looking to litigate, and what is the time you are working towards to achieve this?
Yeah, we're not applying, a broad brush. Certainly, we're going after institutions who are also benefiting from Africa on a large scale. With one hand, benefiting from the operations in Africa, on the other hand, stifling African projects for funds. And we will make that distinction in our approach to whatever institutions to ensure that we have some declarations and we have something that African nations can bank on to start to get the necessary revenue for development of oil and gas and energy projects.
Now, you have mentioned something very significant there, but I want us to delve into the legal strategy here. What specific areas are you looking to present before the international courts? Would you be asking damages or compensation? If yes, I'm wondering how much you're looking at.
I'll leave some of the, legal strategy to our consultation with the technical experts, which are ongoing, but nothing is off the table. What we are trying to achieve is that at the end of the day, the right pushback is heard in appropriate fora to ensure that there is a declaration that funding, forms part of the responsibility and obligations, and also the declaration in terms of trade with these institutions and the nations they come from in terms of what they are to bring to the table for the benefit they also derive from the continent. And that the discriminatory policies are unconscionable. And the fact that Africa will continue to push back on this and perhaps sever, ties and relationships with whichever institutions continue to perpetuate this discriminatory policies.
Now, for me, I would posit that this would have far-reaching consequences, like I said, an implication for Africa's oil and gas future. Now, what will the outcome of the litigation for you? How will it impact Africa's oil?
Yeah, starting from the top, revenues, financing will now flow to appropriate projects. Africa is interested in clean energy. But as of today, this has been said over and over again, 600 million people do not have access to energy. Now, if you want Africa to go ahead and, procure more expensive technology and technologies in terms of energy, where the base revenue does not exist, that's almost impossible. That's taking Africa back to the dark ages. Mm-hmm. And also the science, in terms of what the ESG policies propagate, is problematic. Africa currently constitutes less than 5% of global emissions. And I tell you that if all of the oil and gas developed, the oil and gas reserves we have in Africa today were to be developed over, the usual period of 20 to 30 years, will still fall below 8% of global emissions. That means not calculating, what advantages and efficiencies will occur because of advanced technologies, also carbon capture technologies that exist today and things like that. So the argument on the ESG policies are not sound, cannot be backed by science. And therefore, we consider this financial appetite, if you could, if we're being frank.
Now, there will be significant pushbacks. Already there are pushbacks and resistance from all corners, right? Now, what level of resistance against this historic battle are you expecting from the global and oil and gas firm activists?
I mean, there'll be pushback from certain quarters. Certainly, the environmentalists will continue to push back. You've seen what's happened in East Africa with the EACOP. You've seen what's happened in Mozambique, which could be the top three largest producer of gas in the world. You've seen what's happening in South Africa, where you cannot even shoot seismic. But other parts of the world continue to develop oil and gas. The United States is the highest producer of oil and gas currently in the world. So we'll have the pushback, what we'll deal with it accordingly when it comes.
We are done dreaming of an industrialized Africa. No more enduring long journeys in darkness. No more imagining life without constant power. We are done. We are done. Done tolerating 24 hours without power, load shedding, blackouts, and power cuts. Enough. Imagine a life where our abundant natural resources can't power a generation. We can't cope with that reality. 600 million Africans still lack access to power. We have the solution. It's time to turn imagination into action. African Energy Week 2024 is the platform to implement change, sign deals, and take decisive action. And implement. Join us. Invest in African energies. Energy growth through an enabling environment, and be part of the movement that brings hope to millions across the continent. It's not just about power. It's about empowering lives and giving African hope. Be there to witness the transformation. African Energy Week 2024, where imagination becomes reality. Secure your seat now. Don't miss out on African Energy Week 2024. Visit our website and buy your tickets today. Let's light up Africa and create a brighter future together.
Project. That the time you need to build that project. Sign, baby, sign.
Welcome back to the program. A new report released in the week by the United Nations Sustainable Energy for All reveals a six-fold increase in mini-grid installations globally since 2018, which connects millions in off-grid communities to clean energy. The report, however, attributes this surge to increased investments, supportive policies, and innovative business models. William Brent is the Chief Marketing Officer at Husk Power Systems. I caught up with William to discuss the latest 2024 Seal for All report on the state of global mini-grids markets and its implications for the future of energy, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa. Let's listen.
The full potential of the industry, just to give you a sense of what that means. In Sub-Saharan Africa alone, the World Bank says that mini-grids are the least cost method for connecting 380 million people. And that would require 160,000 mini-grids. So quite a significant scale in terms of what the potential is. And you would have seen from the report that globally, at the end of 2021, there are only about 80,000 connections. So 80,000 compared to 380 million is a huge distance. And if you assume that of that 80,000 that were connections that we now have, let's say half of those are in Sub-Saharan Africa, which is probably an optimistic number, we would still need to grow the number of connections at least 3x, 3 times annually between now and the end of the decade to get to that 380 million number. So, there's a huge gap still in terms of scale that still needs to be overcome. So, again, we're making progress, investments increasing, number of connections is increasing. But even on the investment side, I think last year the report said about $2 billion was invested in the sector. We need tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions, or to get to the scale that we're talking about. So, we're on the right track, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Right. Like you said, the huge gap in that space in terms of scaling. And I think while listening to that webinar, one thing was prevalent, which is how to scale, how to de-risk investments. Now, I wanted to ask, what are the most effective strategies for de-risking mini-grid investments?
I think a couple things come to mind for me. Number one, I think the industry itself has to have a mutually agreed upon set of metrics that we're trying to hit. And so what are those things that we're trying to measure? Levelized cost of energy, capacity utilization. These are things that still, I would say, are not uniformly agreed upon within the industry. In order for investors to look at what we do as an asset category, we need to have uniformity in terms of how we're measuring our own performance. So I think that's one thing. I think, obviously the other is just the investment community and the funding community needs to see more successes, right? We still don't have a critical mass of companies that are achieving profitability and scale. And, as any investor would tell you, they're looking for a proven industry that has, positive stories to tell around specific countries. And I think we're still missing, a critical mass of those companies. So, I think, and that requires us to, as an industry, to come together and agree on sort of how we're measuring ourselves. I think there's a lot of other work that needs to be done as well on the investor side and the funder side. I think in particular, the development finance institutions, people refer to them as the DFIs, their mandate when they were first founded was to help de-risk nascent industries in developing markets and make sure that those technologies and solutions could get to scale. I think the DFI community needs to do a lot more to put up more risk capital, especially when it comes to corporate equity for companies in this industry. Right now, there's a real valley of death between the early stage companies and the growth stage companies where equity is almost non-existent. And the only way that that's going to change is if funders like the DFIs take their mandate for de-risking solutions seriously, and instead of thinking that I'm going to make commercial returns on these investments, I'm going to make lower than commercial returns, or maybe even lose money, because it's part of the mandate and the philosophy behind how the DFIs were founded. So, there are many other things, specific things that you could do to help de-risk the market, in terms of first loss guarantees. Currency devaluation is a real issue in many markets. How do you overcome that so that the stress of currency devaluation it isn't felt so strongly by companies like ours? So we could get into many details, but I'd say those are some of the things that come to mind immediately.
And finally, Africa's energy landscape is undergoing a transformative shift. With new oil and gas discoveries, coupled with a surge in global demand, the continent is moving into an era of unprecedented growth. And that's where you come in. Be a part of this momentum and join us at the African Energy Week Invest in African Energy Conference, taking place from November 4 to 8 in Cape Town, South Africa. Visit the event website at www.aecweek.com to register and secure your spot. You also get a full view of the speaker lineup and learn more about the most talked about energy event of the continent. And that's how we wrap up this package of Energy Frontiers for you at this time. We appreciate you for making the time to watch the show as always. Remember to follow the weekly program on Frontier Africa Reports website, like all the video editions, send in your comments, and subscribe to our YouTube. Kindly follow us as well across all our social media handles as indicated. I am Justina Okechukwu, and I'll see you again soon.